Hi everybody, I hope you're all well. It's only been a few days since my last book review, but the book I have been reading over these past few days has been rather short, so I've been able to get through it rather quickly. I apologise if I sound, kind of tired, or, you can see massive bags under my eyes, because I woke up at like 5 o'clock this morning, or just before 5 o'clock this morning, instantly awake. And it's not like I tend to get up early anyway, but I'm like, just as everyone else, you slowly progress as you wake up, and you're a bit bleary-eyed, and then you take a while just to sit back, relax, and then it's like, I'm awake. Not today. I was having some really vivid, crazy, wicked dreams, and I woke up, actually sat up in bed, wide awake like that, just before 5 o'clock this morning, and I could not get back to sleep. So I've developed a headache because I woke up so early. It is now 25 past. I couldn't even see my time properly at the bottom of the screen. 25 past 8 in the morning. Because I'm really tired this morning, guys, thanks to the stupid dreams in my head. So yeah, if I sound a bit croaky or whatever, it's because I'm still asleep, basically. But anyway, let's talk about the book I've been reading over the past few days, which is The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. I have never read any of John's books before. I basically fell for the story of the Midwich Cuckoos thanks to the 1960s film adaptation of this book called Village of the Damned, which I got recommended to watch thanks to my dad. And I think one weekend it was randomly on TV. It was just starting, but I was like, oh, Village of the Damned. So I was like, oh, I've never watched that, I'll watch it with you. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film. My dad was like, oh, you should read the book, The Midwich Cuckoos. Years and years and years, I think I must have been about 14, 15 when he said that. I'm now 34, so some time has passed. And I was thinking about books I'd like to read, and I put this on my Amazon wish list, and I got it in the my Christmas/New Year book haul back in December and early January. God, I'm like, God, you could tell I'm asleep, can't you? Because I had to properly think then what date it was today and how long ago Christmas/New Year was, and I couldn't figure that out. My God, I am tired. Okay, so that was when when I got the book, and I finally got around to reading it. So The Midwich Cuckoos is based in a British village called Midwich, this fictional village, where we mainly follow a couple called the Zelbys who live in Midwich, but thanks to it being Mr. Zelby's birthday on the 26th of September, they leave the village for the night, have go to theatre, whatever, stay overnight in a hotel, come back the next day. And when they come back the next day, they find that the military have surrounded Midwich. Nobody is allowed to go in. And this strange item has appeared in the village, like an egg, a silver egg. And everyone in the village has fallen asleep. And thanks to various tests and, tying a rope around someone and having them walk towards the village, they discover that there's a 2-mile circumference around the village where if you go in you'll collapse. And yeah, so they're watching basically what's happening for 24 hours, and when those 24 hours are up, suddenly the that 2-mile circumference knocking people out disappears. The egg disappears in a flash, and no one in the village can remember what happened. Then, a couple of months later, every single woman who's of childbearing age discovered that they are pregnant. And they give birth to identical children. So it's all about them trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Is there a possible worldwide connection? What is this thing? And this is... I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying this because it's John Wyndham. He's sci-fi. He's really into aliens. You can imagine what it is. It's an alien invasion. I do love this cover. This is somebody who's been knocked out by going in the 2-mile radius after the alien invasion has begun. And the reason you've got birds here on their ear. They used birds in cages at one point to determine where the knockout zone is as well. But also it's referred to that when the alien invasion began, there was a strange sighting of birds collecting in a field, rather than just, you know, standing, like they had left they could sense something was going on, and it was a very strange sight to see. But yeah, so that's what the bird connection is. So it's all about this alien invasion and such. Now, it was written in the 1950s, not long after the Second World War, and the first film adaptation, the black and white version that I know, was from the 1960s. And so this book has a very kind of war feel, you know, post-war feel as well. And the fact that all the children are identical, they're blonde-haired, they've got these golden eyes and pale skin, almost silver skin. You can imagine just after the Second World War what that can be interpreted as. And they are very much taking control over this village. But why this little village in the middle of nowhere that no one would take interest in? It's actually the perfect location for an alien invasion, if you think about it. So yeah, so it's covers this village and exactly what goes on. Now, I did have issues with this book. It's a good book, but it's not the best. It was a good read for a few days. Let's put it that way. I didn't love it. I didn't dislike it either. I think it just had issues, and I don't know if it's necessarily specific choices that the author has made because of length or whatever, or John just wanted to explore the things that he wrote specifically in this book. I don't know. But the things that I had issues with. Okay, let's go through these. So, firstly, Mr. Selby, who is the guy in the couple who are kind of like our key players, he has a lot of military connections. He is an engineer. He's done a lot of work with the military and such. So when this happens, all of these people from the military who randomly arrive, he knows every single one of them. He's worked with every single one of them. He knows exactly, oh, if that person is there, it's got to do with this. If that person is here, then it's got to do with that. He knows so much information, but these people just happen to fall onto the village where he lives. It's just kind of a bit like, right. Would that really happen? I'm not sure. And because of that military connection, they're like, at times they're like, well, this is protocol, we can't do this. And at other times they're like, oh, he's an old friend, we can tell him whatever we like, he's not going to tell anyone. You know, and Selby is true to his word. He doesn't tell anyone these things who don't need to know it. But the fact that his wife is always at every single meeting as well, it's just kind of like, it's a bit weird. It's a bit weird, especially if this is a worldwide thing. They're going to want to keep it very, very secret. So the fact that they're like, oh, he's my old buddy, he can come along to top secret meetings, and it's just a bit like, okay. Yeah, that's. I have a feeling I felt that same way when I watched the film, but obviously for the very first time. But that was so long ago. I was just a bit like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But then reading the book, it got ignited again, those thoughts. So yeah, I was a bit hurt by that. Secondly, I got hurt by the fact that he doesn't really explore the psychological effect that this is having on the villagers themselves. The most in-depth, as it were, psychological moment is when all of these women have discovered that they are pregnant. A lot of them obviously are teenagers and one in particular, she's never had a boyfriend, she's never had any kind of sexual encounter at all. She discovers she's pregnant. She tries to kill herself because she's not aware at that moment that this is happening to everyone in the village. She has no understanding what the hell is going on. So she decides to kill herself. And it's a really powerful, punchy line when that happens. But then it's just a bit like, oh, poor thing. Right, shall we move on? I would have really liked to have had more of an interesting depth in that. And he did do like some little references, because there was a moment where a man who was in the Navy returned home to his wife after 18 months, discovered that she's pregnant, goes batshit crazy at her and kind of throws her out the house, goes to visit his mother, and it's up to his mother to then explain, actually, this is kind of happening to everyone, and FYI, it's happened to me as well, I'm pregnant. You know, it's just kind of like, okay, so we have had some insight, but there are loads of people living in this village. There's got to be more than that, and the film explores that very, very well, I thought. But I'll talk more about the film later. Thirdly, there are hardly any women mentioned in this as key characters. They are either Mrs. Selby, they are either a village who is randomly referenced in a single line or whatever. We don't get no further information about them, such as the teenager's tried to kill herself, or they are an absolute bitch in the village who I'm going to do reading in a bit as somebody who speaks up at a council meeting, but that's it. They don't get any further than that. The key players are the military and the men who are coming to save the people of the village. You know, it's just kind of like, right. I find the children very fascinating, the way that they are described, the way that they take control of this village, and to have it so that they grow quicker than their ages and such. It's a really terrifying thing to see this thing grow and grow and grow, and obviously they're all very uniform, the way they look and everything, which reflects events with World War II, you know, rise of Nazi party, stuff like that, how it's very, very terrifying and threat on little village in the middle of England that nobody knows about, really. It really does play into the fear of the Nazis taking over England, which never happened, but it was a fear that people had during the war. And so the way that John plays with that in this book is very effective. It just felt a bit bogged down with the military, the dry conversations, procedures that they go through, and the women are basically told to sit down, have a cup of tea, and the men will clear up the mess. And it's like, okay. Now, of course, this was written in the 1950s. It was a different time, you know, all of that jazz. You know, I'm not gonna say, oh, this is a really bad thing for the way that John wrote women and such, because I don't know also if this is where he's like with his other books, because I've never read any other of his books. It was just a bit like, right. But then when you watch the 1960s film, which I had experienced many, many years before, and I'd seen it multiple times, the film is very much like the book in that regard, but it does give more of a balance on the feelings of villagers and such. So overall, it's not a bad book. It's just that it very much feels like, we are men, we're going to save the village, da da da, you know, kind of a book. Yeah, and because of that and the other issues that I had with it, especially kind of, like I said, it felt a bit dry because of the lack of connections with villagers and how the psychological effect of what is happening impacts them. I give it a 3 out of 5. It's a good book. It's a good story, but the way in which John has written it, I expected more from my knowledge of the film. I expected more than what was actually in the book. But as I said, it's a short book. It's only 220 pages long. It could have been John's intention to have it this short and only focus on these elements. So I don't know. But for what it is, it's not bad. It's not amazing, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, so it'd be a 3 out of 5 for me. I'm going to do a bit of reading from this. So this is chapter 9, and this is Zelby Mrs. Zelby has discovered that she's pregnant, and the doctor has informed them both, and of course the military, because all of them are sat in the same meetings all the time, that every woman in the village, it looks like, is pregnant or showing indications that they could be, but they haven't had it officially confirmed yet. And there's about 70 of them in the village. So this is the action plan that happens, and the meeting that takes place with the women in the village. So I'm not going to read the whole chapter. I'm just probably going to read a few pages. So right, the canvassing for attendance at what was not very informally described as a special emergency meeting of great importance to every woman in Midwich was intensive. We ourselves were visited by Gordon Zellaby, who managed to convey a quite dramatic sense of urgency through a considerable wordage which gave practically nothing away. His parrying of attempts to pump him only added to the interest. Once people had been convinced that it was not simply a matter of another civic defence drive or any other of the hardy regulars, they developed a strong curiosity as to what it could possibly be that could put the doctor, the vicar, their wives, the district nurse, and both the Zellabys too, to the trouble of seeing that everyone was called on and given a personal invitation. The very evasiveness of the callers, backed by their reassurance that there would be nothing to pay, no collection, and a free cup of tea for all, had caused inquisitiveness to triumph even in the naturally suspicious, and there were few empty seats. The two chief conveners sat. Oh, I cannot speak today. The two chief conveners sat on the platform with Angela Zelby looking like a little pale between them. The doctor smoked with nervous intensity. The vicar seemed lost in an abstraction from which he would rouse himself now and make a remark to Mrs. Zelby, who responded to it with an absent-minded air. They allowed 10 minutes for laggards that the doctor asked for the doors to be closed and opened the proceedings with a brief but still uninformative insistence on their importance. The vicar then added his support. He concluded, "I earnestly ask one of you here is sorry. Oh my God, I'm so tired. My my vision is blurring practically with these words. I earnestly ask every one of you here to listen very carefully indeed to what Mrs. Zellaby has to say. We are greatly indebted to her for her willingness to put the matter before you, and I want you to know in advance that she has the endorsement of Dr. Willers and myself for everything that she's going to tell you. It is, I assure you, only because we feel that this matter may come more acceptably, and I am sure more ably from a woman to woman. That would have been sorry, oh my God, my eyes, for a woman to women, that we have burdened her with the task. Dr. Willers and I will now leave the hall, but we shall remain on the premises. When Mrs. Zellaby has finished, we shall, if you wish, return to the platform and do our best to answer questions. And now I ask you to give Mrs. Zellaby your closest attention." He waved the doctor ahead of him, and they both went out of the door at the side of the platform. It swung to behind them and did not close entirely. Angela Zellaby drank from her glass of water on the table before her. She looked down for a moment at her hands resting on her notes. Then she raised her head, waiting for the murmurs to die down. When they had, she looked her audience over carefully, as if noticing every face there. First, she said, I must warn you that what I have to tell you is going to be difficult for me to say, difficult for you to believe, too difficult for any of us to understand at present. She paused, dropped her eyes, and then looked up once more. I, she said, am going to have a baby. I am very, very glad and happy about it. It is natural for women to want to have babies and to be happy when they know that they are coming. It is not natural and is not good to be afraid of them. Babies should be joy and fun. Unhappily, there are a number of women in Midwich who are not able to feel like that. Some of them are miserable, ashamed and afraid. It is for their benefit that we have called this meeting, to help the unhappy ones and to assure that they need be none of these things. She looked steadily around her audience again. There was a sound of caught breaths here and here and here. Something very, very strange has happened here, and it has not happened just to one or two of us, but to almost all of us, to almost all the women in Midwich who are capable of bearing children. The audience sat motionless and silent, every eye fixed upon her as she put the situation before them. Before she had finished, however, she became aware of some disturbance and shushing going on to the right side of the hall. Glancing over there, she saw Miss Latterly and her inseparable companion, Miss Lamb, in the middle of it. Angela stopped speaking in mid-sentence and waited. She could hear the indignant tone of Miss Latterly's voice, but not its words. Miss Latterly, she said clearly, am I right in thinking that you do not find yourself personally concerned with the subject of this meeting? Miss Latterly stood up as she spoke in a voice trembling with indignation. You most certainly are, Mrs. Ellaby. I have never in all my life. Then since this is a matter of the gravest importance to many people here, I hope you will refrain from further interruption, or perhaps you would prefer to leave us. Miss Latterly stood firm, looking back at Mrs. Ellaby. This is, she began, and then changed her mind. Very well, Mrs. Ellaby, she said, I shall make my protest against this extraordinary aspersions you have made on our community at another time. She turned with dignity and paused, clearly to allow Miss Lamb to accompany her exit. But Miss Lamb did not move. Miss Latterly looked down at her with an impatient frown. Miss Lamb continued to sit fast. Miss Latterly opened her lips to speak, but something in Miss Lamb's expression checked her. Miss Lamb ceased to meet her eyes. She looked straight before her, while a tide of colour rose until her whole face was a burning flush. So as you can see, it's not the smoothest, it's not the best, but it does keep the pace going. It tells the story and such. So I can't say it's a bad book, but I can't say it's a great book either. It's a great story. I love the concept and everything, but I just felt like it didn't go as deep as I wanted it to. And so for that, it gets 3 out of 5 from me. So what about the film? So here's the film. It is Village of the Damned from 1960, starring George Sanders and Barbara Shelley. There is a sequel to this called Children of the Damned. Now, the book, The Midwich Cuckoos, was originally going to have a sequel, and John did start to write it, but then he scrapped it and it never took off from there. So the sequel, I haven't actually seen. I have no interest in it whatsoever. And the fact is, if it's about children from this film who survive the ending, and I'm not going to give that away because it's the same ending as the book, so I don't want to spoil or anything. 1, that would be bloody ridiculous. And 2, just why, what would be the point? Which makes me believe then that for the sequel, similar events of an invasion and that must have happened in order for them to be in existence, which means then that the bulk of the second film must follow or the same patterns or the exact same procedure as the first film. So again, what is the point? So I have absolutely no interest in the sequel to this, which is called Children of the Damned. So yeah, I've not gone there. So I'm talking specifically the 1960 film Village of the Damned. I really like this. Now they do as I mentioned, they look at some psychological, emotional, and some downright funny moments with the villagers as they go through this whole situation, which gives it a really great natural atmosphere that people were bound to feel certain ways about this situation happening. And it just gives it has such a British charm to it, which I love. But one of the key changes that they made from the book, other than that, is the age of the children. Now, in the book, as I said, they grow twice as fast. So that means when they're about 8 years old, they appear to be about 16, 17. And that's the age they are when the book ends. Whereas in the film, they make it 4 times as fast. So by the time they're 2 years old, they look about 8. So, and they keep them at that age. And the fact that they're all talk quite poshly, they're all in this very grown-up yet higher class outfits and such. They're all identical, their blonde hair and their eyes and everything. It has such an interesting way of, also, one, obviously referring to the war with the symbolism, obviously, with Nazi invasion and such, which I've already mentioned, but also class, because this is a working class village. There is nothing, obviously there are people of comfortable wealth that live there. So like the Zelbys, for example, they're not working class, but they live very comfortably in this village. But all of these children look like they belong in a private school for extremely rich people in the way they talk. So the way that they are more alien, as it were, because they look like they come from a completely different class than the people they were born to, and the people in the village in general. It has a very interesting relation to the English class system in the 1950s, 60s. I just love that. And choosing to film it in black and white as well. Now, I know when I say choose to, colour obviously was around then, so they did have the option to film it in colour, but there's something about putting it in black and white which just fits the narrative so perfect, because you have this, it's almost like nostalgic to what England was, what these villages and the way of life and such. And it also emphasizes because of black and white, the blonde of the children's hair, the way that they look, their pale skin, their golden eyes, it makes it stand out even more. And the cinematography and the costumes and such are designed in a way so that everyone else, whether it's military, whether it's the Zelbys who are a bit more of high class in the village, or if it's the working class, they are in much darker colours. They are more earth based, as it were, which kind of, it matches to being earthlings, being part of the earth, and everything. And then you've got these mystical children who, with this blonde hair, these big eyes, this a lot of them are wearing like something pale. So they might have so for example, if I could show you the picture on the back here, like you've got a girl here, she's got a black dress on, but she's got a white cardigan. There's one over here who's got a skirt on, but she's got a white jumper. On the front, there we go. So white jumper. Boys are in like tweed outfits, as if they look like they're in, as I said, private education for the wealthy, with bright white shirts. It's just, it really makes a point about class system, does this film, as well, just from cinematography and costume. It's very, very, very well adapted. It's pretty close to the book. As I said, there's some changes, but I love the fact that the children are about in the time in Midwich 2 years old, but they look 8 years old. There's something about the way that they speak, what they're saying, being so smart at that age, and have them be small children. There's something very powerful about that. And I just think that is a really, really great choice. So I really would recommend the 1960 version, Village of the Damned. As I said, there was a sequel, Children of the Damned, which came out, I think, a couple of years after this. I never saw it, not interested in it, don't know that one. There was also a 1995 version. I haven't seen that. I've only seen the trailer, and the trailer looks god awful. It was panned when it was made. They made it modern day, and they set it in America, which straight away to me says no. That doesn't work. It just, because the fact that it's a little tiny village in the middle of England that nobody would notice, is the perfect location for an alien invasion. So to change that to like a seaside town in America, I know obviously it might be small, it might be that nobody knows about. I think the setting in the middle of England works so much better than a random seaside town somewhere in America. I don't know exactly. I've only seen the trailer, so I don't know exactly which state it is that it's meant to be reflecting. But yeah, it just doesn't work for me, that trailer whatsoever. I'll include trailers to Village of the Damned and then the 1995 Village of the Damned in the description below for you if you want to check it out. I think possibly someone has uploaded the whole film, this 1960s version, on YouTube. I'm not sure, but if I find that, I will include that in the description links as well. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. Not bad, but not that great either. So yeah, should we run through our questions? So, would I read this again? Yeah, I think I would. I'm not that fussed about reading it again, like ASAP, like I was with like the Midnight Library, which I reviewed earlier this week. But you know, if I'm in a sci-fi mood, it's not that long a book. Yeah, I might give this a go again. Yeah. Would I read any more of John's books? Now, this is a tough one because, like I said, I don't know if negative things I had feeling about this book relate to all of his books or just this one. So I would like to give him another go. But the issue is that I've looked at the John Wyndham book collection and there's not really a book that stands out to make me want to read it. I mean, The Day of the Triffids is the other one that's a very, very well-known story of his about plants taking over the earth, basically, and killing loads of people. But yeah, that's the only other like really well-known John Wyndham book that I can think of off the top of my head. So maybe I should just give that one a go and see how it goes. But there's nothing that stands out in his collection to go, I need to read that. But if you guys got any recommendations for one of his books, let me know and I'll see if I can get hold of one and give it a go. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yes, I would. I would say it was a little dry for me personally, but to give it a go and see what you think, because I don't think it's bad, it's just not amazing. But yeah, give it a go and see what you think. So those are my thoughts on The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you outside. And I'll be back with my thoughts on the next book I'm reading, which is The Ice House by Minette Walters. The last Minette Walters book I have in my collection currently to read. And yeah, I'm quite intrigued by this. My mum said that this is the Minette Walters book that was really quite creepy and scary. So I look forward to reading it and letting you know what I think. And that won't actually be the next video that I'm going to publish, because I've decided to do kind of a random video, which I'm going to be publishing shortly. So look out for that. And then after that point, the next video will be my review of The Ice House. So yeah, I will see you guys later. Bye.